about half of you because we go into revenue, monetization, sales, and marketing. And at that point, people have to pick a revenue model and how you're going to monetize your strategy. And what happens is we'll start here at about 60, 70 people. And by the end of month 4, we'll be about 30 people. And for those of you who leave, I still love you. And you can come back. But I just saved you 3 years of your life not working on a dumbass idea. So that's the goal. Right? So I want you to either prove to yourself the idea is worth pursuing, or prove to yourself you need to pivot. Right? And there's no shame in pivoting or quitting. The only bad thing is if I run into you at an event a year from now and you're still working on the same idea and you haven't done the customer development yet, I'm going to be like total facepalm. Like, why are you doing that? And I laugh a bit tongue-in-cheek, but Carson and I attended a startup weekend years ago when he was 16, and he walked out of there going, there's some really dumb ideas here. And I'm like, that's true. And then I ran into a guy about a year and a half later, and I'm like, are you working on the same idea? He's like, oh, no, I've totally pivoted. And he told me what to do, and I'm like, that's the same idea. And I'm like, I'm like, how long have you been working on it? Now, 6 years. I'm like, dude, don't go 7. Like, that's bad. So, and if I told you what the idea, you'd be like, yeah, that was a dumb idea. But I won't. We're gonna get you set to pitch prep, and in the month 6, you'll do pitches. So in each of these months, kind of build on each other. You can come and go as you please. So the way I've set this up is each ticket is a standalone. If you have to miss something, no worries. We post the video, the slides, and the deliverables. So you can miss one, you can come and go. Life happens, right? I totally get it. The reason we don't sell all 6 months in advance is because I know half of you are going to quit in month 4 because you're going to be like, and I always tell people, I like you as founders, I don't always like your ideas. Abstract yourself from your idea, because otherwise you'll be offended. Not my intent, right? So, because if you look at the content, a lot of people come because they want help fundraising. Fundraising is the last step of the process we're gonna go through. You need to do the data first. Like, you have to start with, is your idea a good idea, right? Is the market a good market? Do I have a good product? Do I have an MVP? Do I know how to make money? And we'll get through the data that makes all those things happen. And then ultimately you're gonna do fundraising. So from a fund perspective, I used to had, the last version of this deck had a pyramid with it. I got to go actually visit the pyramids with my youngest son about 6 months ago to go speak at a startup event in Cairo, by the way. And yeah, if you try to build the top of the pyramid first, I got a news for you. It ain't gonna work. And by the way, each block on that is about 3 tons. So when you stand up next to it, 1 block was up to here on me. All right, from a monthly mechanics perspective, here's what you can expect every month. You're gonna come, you'll grab dinner, the mentors will be here, we'll kick off the session. Before you talk to the mentors, you're gonna share your work with your table mates. You as a table are gonna decide who gets to speak first, based on the work they did, and who doesn't get to speak based on the work you didn't do. So if you don't do the work, my deal with the mentors is, so Gary Ridner's right here, so Gary, raise your hand. So Gary's super active angel investor in town, great friend. My deal with mentors is they don't have to listen to the same person give the same pitch 3 months in a row who didn't do any work. That's why they come back. So if you don't do the work, you don't get a pitch. You don't get to talk about your idea. If you don't do the work 2 months in a row, I just ask you to leave, right? And the reason is simple. Like, life happens. My wife's a cancer survivor, right? Things happen in life. And one of 2 reasons for not doing the work is there. Either life happened and got in the way, which is totally cool, or you're not super committed to the idea. And you know probably, like, in your reptilian brain that you're like, yeah, this is a bad idea. I shouldn't do it. So if you don't do work 2 months in a row, I'm not going to force you to leave. I'm not going to check your homework. But know that if you don't do it 2 months in a row, the message to yourself is, hey, maybe this isn't a great idea. Cool? So you can come back next time we do it. Totally happy to have you. So, all right. So the meetups, I mentioned standalone, deliverables, great. Communications. So tomorrow morning you will get an email from me with all of the content. A couple days later you'll get a link to the video. It'll be in the same blog post. There's a Slack channel. That's the link to it. You will get that in email tomorrow as well. When you join the Slack channel, a couple requests for you. There's a general Slack channel. There's a channel called 2019 Seattle. That's just this group of people. There's an introductions channel. So please go introduce yourself. My name's Dave, I'm on the business side, here's what my idea is, and here's something I need help with, okay? That way people will get to know you as you start to hang out with folks. The idea of this is, from a networking perspective, gives you a chance to meet people in an environment where you can actually talk about what you're working on from an idea perspective. So if you have a question for me, please ask it there in the general channel and just tag me on it. If anybody hasn't used Slack yet, you just put @Dave, and my name will pop up, and you select me because there's other Daves here too. Ask your question, and I will respond for the benefit of the group. If you send me an email, I may not get to it, just so you know. So this is my way to do one-to-many. If I had to do 30-minute coffees with everybody in the room, I would be about 50 hours in without logistics. And me over-caffeinated is not a good thing. Like me normal is probably not in some ways, but over-caffeinated not so much. So the idea here is get through the program, go hit the milestones, do the deliverables and the work. Happy to meet with you. Happy to listen to your pitch. I'll be listening to your pitch almost every month. Happy to look at investing. And I know some of you are like, yeah, that applies to everybody else in the room, but not me, so I'm gonna reach out to Dave directly. I'm gonna point you right back to Slack. So some rules of the road along that note. So one of the things, anybody ever been to a startup weekend? All right. So I used to run startup weekends globally, and we sold that company to Techstars in 2015. And Techstars hashtag is give first. Obviously nobody owns hashtags, but they push that one. And I'm a big fan of that. So as you're around the table and talking to people tonight, the big thing is, how can I help you? Not how can I be helped. So invest in the table around you, give first, it amazingly comes back. This is a chance for you to network with people who you know are also startup founders with different skill sets. Awesome, congratulations, you bring different skills to the room. Just so you know, if I hand you a microphone and you ramble, I will take the microphone back. Because as startup founders, we're a little bit different, right? If I give everybody, like, you have 2 minutes to do a pitch, you're like, hey, yeah, it applies to everybody else, but it doesn't apply to me. No, it applies to you. In fact, don't be that person. You know who I mean. You've seen them in startup events. We talked about mentor access already. I'm not going to do the check your work. 2 months no deliverables. I'll ask you to leave. I will not force you to leave, but I will ask you to leave. So don't be offended. All right. So the goal of the program is to get you out of your head and to have you hit your deliverables. So one of the things that I did last summer was I had a chance to do a very long bike ride called Ramrod. Ramrod is 154 miles and 10,400 vertical in one day. And I trained like a madman. In fact, Malcolm and I trained at the same place for Flywheel for indoor. The reason I trained like a madman was I'm going to die if I don't. That's a huge problem. So, but I had a training buddy, and we trained a lot. And it wasn't easy, and all the work you spend training goes into that one day of a ride. And people are like, I see the one day, that was amazing. And I'm like, well, actually, there was 5,400 miles in last year that I trained, total. A lot of it before the ride. So the point of it is this is your training opportunity to get here. You're gonna have a set of deliverables every month. You're gonna have a set of people you're training with, and you have to go do the work and put forward the deliverables. If you do that, you'll love it. If you don't do it, you're gonna feel overwhelmed in about month 3 from a customer development perspective, because I'm gonna ask you to go talk with 25 potential customers a month. They will inform your decision about what product you ship, what features you ship, and what prices you pay, or what you should charge. And without those customer interviews, you have theory. And as I always tell, especially founders when we're talking about investment, is I have an opinion, you have an opinion. That's awesome. I have a checkbook. If you have data, I'm totally willing to change my opinion. But if you just have an opinion and I have an opinion, probably not going to change my opinion. So there's markets I like, there's markets I don't like. You know markets I've never even considered. So that opinion's great. That opinion with data is amazing. And that's what's going to change things for you. So you're going to go get the data. Can you go faster in 6 months? Absolutely. Most people don't. Partially because it's hard to schedule customer interviews. And the customers don't always respond to your time frame. They're like, I need to do 25 interviews before next month because Dave said so. And they're like, I can't meet with you. Right? So you're like, fine, schedule it for the following month. Right? So the customers won't always respond to your need. That's why it's going to take time to get through it. So it's about you getting prepped And make sure, since you're the first investor in your idea, it's making sure the idea that you're pursuing today is actually worth your time from an investment perspective. So I'm just trying to put a spin on it to help you understand it from as an investor. Is the big idea, is it worth my time as an investment? My bigger question to you all, is it worth your time? Because the average time to exit from venture capital out is between 6 and 7 years. Most of you do that work 2 years before you even get to meet a pitch for an institutional capital. So you're looking at a 7 to 10 year deal, and the question is it worth your while or not? And if you can get an answer to that question in 6 months or 6 weeks, then do that. Don't do it in 3 years, right? Save yourself some time so you won't get the time back. So quick note on fundraising, because I know a lot of you, how many of you have aspirations to raise capital? All right, it's interesting, about 50%. So your need for capital doesn't actually equate to your ability to raise capital. Right? So just saying, maybe a surprise, people are like, Dave, you don't understand, I really have to raise money. I understand, it has nothing to do with your ability to raise money. So the need for capital and your ability to raise, if you go through and do this work, whether your idea is fundable or not from an institutional perspective, or an angel perspective is a different question, but you have to do the work to get ready to be fundable in any case. So that's what you're going to go through in the next 6 months of deliverables. So angel investors make different decisions than we make as institutional investors, because I write a check from somebody else's money. Gary writes a check from his own money. Right, so he's like, I like you. I'm like, I really have to have, because my limited partners want to know that I'm investing on a theme and a thesis, and I did my due diligence, and I really like the deal, and like a whole process of that. In fact, you're going to score yourself on that process in just a few minutes. So the idea here is, I want you to think like an investor, because in the next 6 months it's your time, and then after 6 months it becomes getting a chance to talk with investors, okay? So questions before we go on to score yourself. Mechanics, logistics, thousands of copycat Groupons, right? So that would be a timing question. If you were starting a new version of Groupon today, the timing would be bad. Like, too late. So the other side of timing that's bad is too early. Like, if you're a visionary, and you're like, I see the market before it exists, which part of the dilemma is you're in this room and you're a founder, so you truly are this way already. Otherwise you wouldn't be here, because all of us are. But if you're too early to market, what's hard is you're going to condition the market and try to change the market's how they buy before they're ready to change. And that one's really bad, because as a founder, we're like, I believe, but the market isn't ready for you yet. So that can be expensive. So you need to have a long-term plan to do that. So my first startup went from 0 to 32 million in 4 years. So 4 co-founders to 156 people in 4 years. I made every mistake you could make. There was some bad, like it was not good. Mostly because I'd never done it before, I didn't have anybody around me, like you're making decisions around stuff, you're like, I don't know. Like, just make the best decision you can. The challenge was, we thought it was going to be a multi-billion-dollar market that was going to mature faster, and it never matured. Arguably, it hasn't even matured from today to the market we thought it was going to be. So if you think the market's timing is great, right, you just don't want to be too far in front of the market, and you definitely don't want to be behind the market. So your idea of timing the market perfectly is never really good, that won't happen. So just like, there's things you'll deal with from a timing perspective. If the market has already raised, and we'll get into this in research as it relates to Crunchbase, everybody know Crunchbase? You're going to know this Crunchbase well before you're done with the 6 months. You're going to find competitors there, and you're going to see who has raised money and how much money have they raised. And if they have raised, if competitors in your space have already raised over $100 million, the answer is, I don't like that market. Like, it's already overfunded. So from a funding perspective, they've sucked the oxygen out of the room. And you may have a completely unique idea, but from a timing perspective, your timing's not great. That doesn't mean you should kill the idea, but it does mean how you go to market is going to be very different. Okay? All right. So what were some scores? Just throw numbers out there.
29.
21, 27, 30.
34.
34.
12.
24. 18. All right. 15. All right. So some of you are slightly biased in favoritism, and some of you are fairly objective. That's awesome. After the last cohort, the average was about 23. So if you're in that range, the answer is awesome. You're about where most founders are about in this stage for month one. If you're below that, the answer is some of these things you probably haven't thought about before. And one of the challenges with that is, so as founders, we tend to look at product first. I'm building this amazing thing, right? And as an investor, I look at it the opposite direction, which is I'm looking for an exceptional return. But in order for you to get to the exceptional return, you have to do product, customer acquisition, and then returns. So I'm looking at it one way, you're looking at it another way. So what we're going to do in the next 6 months is help you make sure you can see it from both directions. How do I get to exceptional returns? So the idea there is how do you acquire customers at reasonable economics? So in a scalable and forecastable way. And some of you are like, I know that was English, but I have no idea what you just said. Totally okay, you'll be here with me as we get into month 4. You basically get to pick a revenue model. How are you going to monetize? Maybe a subscription, maybe a transaction fee, are you a service business? So, but how you acquire customers is a significant part of the expense of the business, not just the cost of building the business. How many of you here are developers or engineers? Awesome. How many business people? Okay, designers, some of those? Oh, awesome, okay. All right, so we kind of got marketers. Right, so it's actually a good, interesting distribution. So as we break into the groups you'll meet with in between, you've got some skill sets there that are not your skill sets, which is perfect, right? Because if there's somebody like you on the team, you may not have a balanced team in how you want to go about it. All right, so good, congratulations on getting the scores done. Put these away so you can find them later because you're going to score yourself after month 5 as well to see how you've improved. But if you have any 2s on there, you know what one of the things you need to start working on is to get the 2s up. So, because the 2's not going to get you funded. All right, so let's go from there to workshop. So one of the big things that from an investor perspective and as a founder perspective that I want you to think about is why are you doing this? Like, the odds of success for startups are really bad. Like, there's better ways to make a living than doing a startup. So the first question you have to ask yourself is why are you doing this? And if you haven't seen Simon Sinek's video yet, starting with why, that's probably there's probably 60 great minutes of stuff on YouTube. That's not a waste of time, or as my teenagers would say. But this is probably 17 minutes of the best content on YouTube as it relates to why. It basically starts with why, how, and what. And as founders, we tend to start with what first and get to why later. Because we're thinking about product or features or what things I'm going to do. But the real question just for you tonight is what's your why? So some of the things that are bad answers to this question is I want to make $1 billion. Probably not the reason you're going to do it. So like if you do it and you make $1 billion, that's awesome. I've probably in 10 years seen less than $5 billion ideas and probably had a chance to invest in one. And we'll see. It's still too early to know if that one, but it's like really, 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 truly big ideas. Do you want to change the world? That's awesome. I think you should. I think you can either make your money and then spend it to change the world, or sometimes you can do both, but seldom not. Like changing the world and making money at the same time can be a huge challenge. And if you're a for-purpose entity, and as I look back to social ventures a few years ago, the challenge was, as a for-purpose entity I didn't really have a way to monetize this, so I'm calling it a for-purpose entity because we're going to change the world. And the answer is that's a nonprofit. And nonprofits are great, and if there's anybody running a nonprofit, I commend you, it's awesome. I used to run a nonprofit. They're awesome, and you get to change the world every day. That is not a startup revenue model. Now, I've seen a lot of startups that didn't make money, but that's not a startup revenue model either. Right? So you just need to have a plan for how you're going to make money. Are you solving a big problem, or are you solving a little problem? Yeah,
What's your opinion on for-benefit corporations?
For-benefit corporations definitely have a place to be. For those of you who don't know, for-benefit is called a B Corp. The idea of a B Corp is we designate as a founding team that we're going to give a certain percentage or profit or outcome of whatever it is to a particular cause or benefit. And then as we incorporate as an entity with that as the mandate. You can do that when you incorporate. You can't do it after you take investor money. So if that's your intent all along, that's awesome. You can definitely do it. It's going to attract a different investor than a straight for-profit entity will.
AKA not you.
Not necessarily. It depends on what the for-purpose is, and it also depends on the unit economics
Yeah.
piece. If you can produce an exceptional return and still be for benefit, then the answer is that's cool. At the end of the day, I have limited partners, and when I say, hey, we're investing in companies that change the world, they're like, what's my return? And I'm like, yeah, but, and they're like, what's my return? And I'm like, totally get that. Now, as an angel, I may be able to say, oh, I love that idea. I want to invest in that, or I believe in you. But that's a different investor profile than a straight for-profit investor profile.
So I might be reading this response wrong, but would you say it's a bit of putting the cart before the horse?
It can be, because so the question is it putting the cart before the horse? I think as a founder, when you exit a company and you want to take your money and give it to a cause or contribute to a cause or go change the world, and there's lots of founders who go do that, I would say that's, at least on your first one, I would probably do your first one that direction and use the money that you have as a benefit to go change the things you want to change. So, personal perspective on that one. So is it a big problem or a small problem? So if you're changing something that's a small thing, then it's super hard to fund. We'll get to markets in a little bit. But the idea is if it's a big problem and really big, then it's sometimes boiling the ocean and it's so big, I'm like, I don't know how you're gonna do it, right? Which is a challenge. Is it an inexpensive problem or an expensive problem? So you see these are kind of sliders, and as you look at your idea, what you're gonna start to look at is like, okay, where's this slider on this thing, right? Because if there's money there to be made, so one of the things I love about startups is where there's mystery, there's margin. But where there's no mystery, there's no margin. So what I mean by that is my first startup, what we did was we made pricing available to small business customers that figure out how to do software licensing. So it's super geeky. We had big channels of folks who were like, we don't really want to sell Microsoft software, but we have to because we have to install it. It's really hard to figure out what products we should be buying. So the challenge was, it was a little bit early days of the internet, 1998, 99, and that data wasn't readily available. So what we did by making that data more transparent is we actually drove down our own margins. Oh, in retrospect, not a great idea, right? So we sold the company. Worked out okay in the grand scheme of things, but one of the things that we did was we basically enabled our competitors to get the tools they needed to find out the products they needed and then shop us for price. So where there's mystery, where people can't figure that out, you can make more money. Where there's less mystery, that's a challenge. So I was doing a startup weekend in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and there's a bunch of people doing marketplaces. I'm like, that's strange, like disproportionate high percentage of marketplaces. And the reason is because marketplaces there, where data is opaque, marketplaces can be super competitive. Because as you make that data transparent, you create a marketplace. Here, I'm like, we have that here. Right? We have APIs for pricing for wholesale auto parts. Right? You're like, there's nothing that's not opaque. So that's the difference between where there's mystery and there's margin. So one of the interesting opportunities too is, do you have any unique intellectual property? For most of us in the tech startup space, it's speed and knowledge of the customer. So the attorneys here can give you good feedback on, do you have something that's patentable or do you have IP and intellectual property? For most of us, it's really speed and knowledge of the customer. Because if you're faster than your competitors and you're more nimble than your competitors and you know the customer better, those are bets that we make all the time. But whether you have 25 patents or not. So though I've invested in those too. All right, side note, passion is super important, but not sufficient. So people are like, yeah, but you don't understand, I'm super passionate about this. I'm like, great, that's awesome. No one's gonna write you a check based on passion alone. So like, it's super important because to get through this journey, to get up a hill, I was talking with somebody at the break, he's like, his brother rode Grand Run. It was 96 degrees when we hit the top of the pass in July. It was freakishly hot. Like it was the hardest thing I've ever physically done. So when you get through this journey, passion will be important, but it won't be sufficient. So data is important, data will inform your decisions, how you have access to capital is important, how you build a team is important. So we're gonna cover all of those things. It's important you're passionate, but that's not it. So take a couple minutes right now and just write down what's your why, because you're gonna have to reflect back on this when you're like, I don't know how I'm gonna make payroll for my team. I just want you to remember your why. So take a couple minutes and write that down. All right, how's your why wrapping up? You're gonna come back and revisit the why a number of times through the process, but I just want you to take a minute and get a handle on the what's driving you other than being a founder. The good thing about being a founder is you get to make yourself CEO because there's nobody to argue with. Or like, not co-CEOs, by the way. Co-founders is totally fine. All right, so quick quiz. Why do startups fail? Top couple reasons. They run out of money. That is one of the reasons. Infighting. Yeah. There wasn't a market need. Poor business plan. Any others?
Can't fundraise.
Can't fundraise. Unit economics are bad. That one's a good one. Yeah. Strategy. Okay. Here's your list. These are sorry for the eye chart. I'll walk you through it. This is so, CB Insights does this every quarter. By the way, it doesn't change very much. So the number one reason is no market need. Why do we do customer development month 2 through 6? I want you to prove that there's a market need for this. So, and by the way, no market need is disproportionately high. For those of you who can't see it, 42% of startups fail because they built a product that nobody wanted or needed. Which, when you think about it, is kind of crazy, right? So this is where the founder says, "Hey, Dave, I'd like to meet with you. Will you sign a non-disclosure?" And the answer is absolutely not. And that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Because so I'm working on a startup idea right now, and every chance I have to talk with somebody about it, I'm talking with them about it. People are like, "Can't somebody steal your idea?" So here's the deal, right? So Jim and I have known each other for a while. If Jim and I sat up here today and had the same idea as co-founders and decided that we weren't going to be co-founders anymore, but we were both going to pursue the idea, in 6 months they would look completely different. Thematically they may be the same, but how we did it would be completely different. Because what he knows and his life experience and his skill set is different than what I know in my life experience and skill set. So the difference that you're going to take into this process over the next few months is starting with a scientific null hypothesis. So I've been working an idea, Nick knows because I've bounced stuff in, and I've been out for about a year trying to kill this idea, and it just won't die. But every time I meet with somebody, I'm like, "Hey, I'm working on this idea, Malcolm, what do you think about this? Tell me." So, and we'll talk about this next month in detail so you can map it out. The last question I always ask people is, if this was to fail, why would it fail? So what's different is for first-time founders, you have one precious idea. And you're like, "I don't really want to know why it's going to fail." Which is a bummer, because you're going to find out. The only question is when. So I'm a big fan of finding out as fast as you can that this is why the idea is going to fail. So the way we approach, and we'll talk about it next month when we talk about customer development, you're going to ask a very structured set of questions, and the last questions you're going to ask is, if this idea was to fail, why would it fail? And then when somebody says, "Oh, well, since you gave me permission," right? Because human nature is such where it's like, "I like you and I want to be positive," right? And especially friends and family, they're, by the way, the worst to get feedback, because they're like, my first startup, my mom was always like, "I don't really know what he does, but I love him." And I'm like, yeah, that's not great feedback if you're trying to come up with a startup idea. So asking friends and family, not such a great idea. I'm working with a friend right now who has a really great idea, and he's just augured in on price. He's like, "This is going to be our price." I'm like, "That's not the price." He's like, no, I'm going to argue with you about price. I'm like, "Dude, stop arguing with me about the price. Like, go get the data and then tell me." But he's just like, he's just augured in on price, right? He's convinced it's the price. Price is a variable you're going to test over the next 6 months. You're wrong. It's only a question of orders of magnitude. It's just like doing a financial model. Anybody done a financial model for a startup? You know how to do Excel? Awesome. Excel's a great tool, right? And things will go up and to the right, right? So Carson did some research for me recently on we went back and looked at the Inc. 500 list over the last 10 years. People are, we're going to go from 0 to 300 million in 4 years. I'm like, wow. Do you know that no company in the history of the Inc. 500 list has ever done that? Now, 5 years, Groupon did go from 0 to nearly $1 billion in 5 years. I would argue it wasn't actually their revenue, right? But other than that, one company in 5 years. right? So these are a series of things you're going to test from a hypothesis perspective. It's a hypothesis. Understand that it's wrong. It's only a question of orders of magnitude wrong. What you want to do is figure out where it's wrong and change as you go so you can get it right faster. That's really the outcome of the 6-month program. So you've got wrong product. Number 2, ran out of cash. Number 3 was not the right team. Number 4 was get out-competed. Pricing and cost issues was number 5. Poor product was number 6. Need or lack of business model was number 7. I think it's actually, as that matures, it's stronger. Poor marketing, ignore customers, product mistime, lose focus, disharmony within team or investors. So that one's actually fairly far down the list. By the way, next month you're going to have what's called awkward co-founder discussions. So your deliverable is you have to go have a beer with your co-founder and then bring back your percentage splits. Because you need to have it, and the sooner you have it, the better. So waiting, so that's, some of you won't make it to month 3 because you won't have co-founders anymore. So yeah.
This adds up to a lot more than 100%.
Yeah, so there's multiple factors. So they gave you a choice of what was the number 1, here's your list, pick 5.
Yeah.
It was kind of the way they did it. And again, they do it every quarter, but the percentages change slightly, but the reasons don't change very much, which is interesting.
They have to pick 5 because that would bias the data.
Yeah, I don't know what they asked them to rank them.
Okay.
So here's a list of things that could go, and since otherwise it'd be open text box and it would be able to normalize, so that's the way they've done it. Yeah, ran out of money is different than no financing or investor interest. All right, let's talk about ideation. So here's the deal about ideation. How many of you have an idea you're pretty committed to at this point, or maybe 3? Awesome. How many of you don't have an idea, but you came anyway because you want to hang out and it happens? It's totally cool. Yeah, no, it's totally cool. It's awesome. All right, so I'm gonna spend time with the majority of folks, and hopefully I can drag you along through the process into some of the ideation. I'm one of the people who's cursed with, I've got lots of ideas, but not much time. And then for those of you who are like, I have one precious idea, and you shall not kill it. Yeah, this is gonna be a challenging few months for you. So the idea here is I think the valley is wrong, right? The whole concept of fail fast and fail often, I think is stupid. It's not stupid if you have a trust fund, right? Or you don't have, like, your parents are writing you a check, or you don't have to worry about bills, or like you went to an amazing school and like your uncle is whatever. But for the rest of us, mere mortals, the idea of failing actually is quite painful. And from personal experience, I can tell you the wounds have healed, but the scars are still there. And at times you'll see me get a little twitchy, right? And it's because, I've made a lot, I've lost a lot. Failing's painful. So rather than fail fast, I would encourage you to kill bad ideas fast. And we're going to break those ideas into categories. There's ideas for marketing, there's ideas for your main product, there's ideas for your customer, and you're going to go test all of those things, and you're going to be like, that didn't work the way I thought it was going to work, which is totally cool. Like my friend who's awkward in on price. I'm like, I'm trying to get him to like, go test it and see if you're right. I think you're wrong, but go test it. I'm not happy to be wrong. Like we'll have that conversation with some of us over office hours, and you'll be like, I'm committed to this. Those are all pieces of a whole that you're putting together to make this work. So you're testing a thesis for all of those things, and just know that some of them are going to be wrong, and that's totally cool. So kill bad ideas fast, don't fail fast. Here's the deal, and it's quoted by somebody else, not by me, by the way. The mediocre team in a great market can still get a great result. But an amazing team in a bad market will still fail, which is why market's so important and one of the top topics that we're talking about tonight. So if you have an amazing team, but you have a crappy market and the margins are falling out of that market, there's not much you can do. That's a headwind. That's not a tailwind, right? And you just need to be objective about it. As you go out and do customer development, do interviews, and talk to people, you're going to figure out, like, oh, is this a good market or not? And time is part of that. So if you think of these as vectors, so a vector is just a trajectory of flight. So it's a direction with magnitude. So what direction is it going? Is to have a lot of magnitude or not? And the type of vectors for you is I'm just giving you some that people think about in different ways. So Rich Barton, who started Zillow and Expedia, one of the vectors of his idea is what he called power to the people. So in the real estate idea, the only way before Zillow that you get the information is you had to have a real estate agent because they were the one with the access to the data. So Rich's perspective on that, and Expedia, and what's the surgical, cosmetic surgery
Real
site that
Self.
launched it? What's that?
Real self.
Real Self.
Avo.
And Avo, Real Self was the one he seeded.
Sponsored.
Yeah, so, and then the idea there is you take what is normally opaque data and make it transparent. So that's power to the people. So maybe your idea is a power to the people idea. A few years ago, I was sitting in New York trying to convince Chase that they should do a credit card for founders that allowed us to get off of our personal credit and go to business credit.
Brex.
Damn it, and then Brex did it. I shouldn't have tried to talk them into it, I should have just done the frickin' idea. That is a total latent need idea. Right, when you observe something that's completely frustrating to you and you're like, shit, somebody should fix this. And I tried to convince Chase to do it. I should have done Brex. I mean, Brex raised their last round, it was over $1 billion market cap. They've been around for 3 years or less. Frustration. So if you have an area you're like, this is just a frustration to me, that's probably a good sign of a startup idea. Marketer industry trends. So I just flew back from CES this morning, or this afternoon. And one of the things that was there that we were there to see for a project that I'm working on is a flying vehicle made by Bell Helicopters that fits where Uber's going with Uber Elevate, which is how do we drop you off at a spot in Seattle and let you take a flying vehicle to SeaTac, which is pretty cool actually, right? So it's a VTOL, so think of it as it's like a drone, but it's a big ass drone that carries 5 people.
Is it Blackfly?
What's that?
Is it Blackfly?
Yes. So the Bell Helicopter one's totally cool. And it looks like every sci-fi movie you've ever been to, by the way. So Avatar, it's totally Avatar. But it's a cool product. So where are there market trends that are in your favor? So if you're still thinking about what your idea is, look at them from this perspective. There's lots of different angles to look at your idea. These are just a few to help you give context. And then ultimately, does that vector get you the direction and the magnitude that you want? Right, so if you look at your idea and you're like, oh, it gets me the direction I want, but it never really gets any altitude, probably not a great idea. Right, and that's where you start to pivot around, oh, I'm starting here, but I'm moving as I go. A famous venture capitalist talked about it in terms of a surfer analogy, so I'll give it to you because I think it's a good example. The wave is the trend, the board is the product, and the surfer is the leader in the team. If you have one of those, that's awesome, but you really need all 3 of them to make it work. So, timing, by the way, bad waves are bad. Killer waves are just as bad, unless you're prepared for it. Bad products are a challenge, right? The wrong person for the team is a challenge. The wrong person for the market's a challenge. But there's a fund in the valley that looks at it this way, and they've given it's a great analogy because you can look at it and say, do I kind of have all of these things or not? So problem and opportunity. So you'll hear it talked about is, are you a vitamin or are you a pain pill? Like, do I have to have that? Or is it something that's like, yeah, it'd be good to have? So when you start doing customer development interviews next month and you're gonna ask people, hey, do you like this idea? And if the answer is, meh, that's not good. Like, meh is, I'm not gonna buy it. Right? If somebody's like, oh my God, I would pay you for that now. You're like, that's a good sign, right? And then the next question is, that's awesome, how much would you pay for it? Because I'm always trying to validate both price and product and feature, like what feature should I ship next, right? So is it a vitamin or is it a pain pill? What's the opportunity? Who are you solving this for? And by the way, not everything's a problem. A good friend of mine is Dave Bloom. He started a company called Z2. Z2 sold to Candy Crush, who makes, what's the game? Well, Candy Crush is the game. King is the company. So they sold to King for $150 million. And David's always like, I don't solve any problems, I just help people have fun. Totally legit, right? We tend to think about it as if like we solve problems. And hopefully you solve big problems and that's cool, but if you're like, hey, we just have fun, we're doing games, the answer is, that's awesome. You're in a very hit-driven business, so you have a different set of criteria you have to think about. So, and then there's this concept of can you both create value as well as capture value. So creating value is a product, capturing this value is how you sell it, and how much economic return is in it. So if you create a product and capture value that has very small margins, the answer is that's a good business and you can still make money at it. But if it doesn't produce great margin, you're not gonna get investors interested in it. Right, so that's the continuum that you look at there. And ultimately, who's gonna pay for it? So we'll talk about revenue models as we get to month 4, but the question of, are you business to business, or are you business to consumer, the whole concept of, well, we're B to B to C. No, you're not. You don't have that much runway. Like, you need to know who's gonna pay for it, how they're gonna pay for it, and have a hypothesis of how they're gonna pay for it. So when your business is at scale, you can be a bunch of different things. But when you're starting off and you're here, your room for failure is super tiny. So today, Uber has multiple revenue models, right? They get referral fees, they will get underwrite cars, they have transaction fees, they have credit cards. When they launched, they were a marketplace. And the marketplace captured value on 2 sides and created a market of both people who wanted to buy and people who wanted to sell. It's just a marketplace. But at scale, there are lots of different things. And the problem for us as founders is we see the future as if it exists today. And sometimes we just can't be bothered by what the reality is until you run out of cash and have to make payroll, which is always a problem. So your business and your idea is going to change over time. Know that at launch it's going to be different than it is at scale. Okay? There's a difference between products and companies. So today you're launching, you don't have enough money to do both a company brand and a product brand. You're going to do one brand. Just trust me on that one. If you're spending a lot of money, you can build both a product brand and a company brand. But products aren't really fundable. Companies are fundable. So you need to know how you build value for the company. So if your tool, or what you're building is a tool, I'm not saying you're a tool, I'm saying the company is a product may be a tool. So there's a company here in town called VendorHawk. Anybody heard of VendorHawk? So they came through Techstars. I was a small investor in it. And they basically track your license usage of things like DocuSign and Smartsheet, and they would tell you how many of the licenses you used were active and inactive, which is really kind of a cool product, but it kind of fit into somebody else's overall solution. So they ended up selling to a much bigger company where their product was useful to a much bigger customer base. So it was a good company and a good product, but it was kind of a feature in somebody else's product. And it's okay to start with a feature, just know that right now we're a feature. I should probably say feature, not a tool, because people take that wrong. So it's okay to start that way, but know that's where you're going. So for some of you, you're going to do a lifestyle business. And a lifestyle business sometimes people view as derogatory. I don't mean it as derogatory at all. The lifestyle businesses are good businesses. They tend to be geographically centered, right, on the customers that are around me. They tend to employ people, like friends and family. But they're not the type of business that will help you be scalable and make money when you sleep. Like a scalable business from a venture perspective is, you fell asleep tonight, awesome, congratulations. How much money did you make? Right? That's kind of a scalable business. So you don't have to, if you're in a services business, for every new customer I bring on, I have to bring on new staff to help me deliver for that customer. Maybe a restaurant, maybe consulting. Well, the idea of a services business versus a product business is, I can ship product or make money when I sleep. To make it into a 4-quadrant box for you as an example, I have business to business, I have business to consumer, I have products, and I have services. So you're not all of those things. You're not doing both B2B and B2C. Again, you don't have enough capital to do that. Plus you want to do it anyway. You're either a product or you're a service. Now you can productize a service, which we'll get into when we talk about month 4, which is like, we have people who deliver this today, but we're building tools to lower our costs so that we need less people to deliver to more customers. Totally cool as a revenue model because you can scale it. But in consulting, if I try to sell my consulting services to somebody, Carson's great, he just turned 24. Does anybody want Carson to do my work when you bought me? Right? Super hard to do. So services businesses are tough because you want the person you hired to deliver the service. Right? He's out there. He'll tell me later what should be talking about. All right, so Salesforce is an example of B2B product. Consulting is an example of B2B services. Gaming is an example of B2C product. And for-profit school, so I used to run a company here in town called CodeFellows. CodeFellows was a business-to-consumer service. So we sold to consumers. We gave them a service, which was a 20-week training program. And completely different marketing criteria, by the way. So we did stuff like, radio ads and wrapped buses, and we were doing consumer marketing, and it was really hard to digitally track, right? Versus like a B2B software product, I'm like, I can buy AdWords and drive you to my website and track conversions. So very different models. So this is one of those where you just kind of, you gotta pick one, right? And if the answer is, well, we could be B2B or we could be B2C, the answer is, well, you got some data to do next month and do customer interviews and you'll figure it out. So, so the next question is, should you buy it? So I'm gonna give you a couple good examples. So should you build it? This is a internet-connected belt. It's a great example. You can build it. Should you build it? I don't think so. Well, at least I don't want to invest in it, right? Not that investing is the only criteria, but you could clearly build this. I just don't think you should. Now, here's an example of one that was funded. Anybody remember this one? $120 million went into this company. So they'd ship you juice in a bag, and you could squeeze it with your hands and do the same thing that the juicery would do. And $120 million went into this company, totally tanked. When people found out you could squeeze the bag with your hands and make it work the same way. Now, so that my criteria is investment isn't a sign of success, by the way. Like raising venture capital isn't a sign that your company will be successful. So making money is a sign your company will be successful. So the reason I bring those two up is there's lots of things you can do, I'm just not sure you should do them. So, but $120 million, what do I know? All right, I'm gonna have you take a few minutes right now, we'll take a little bit of break, and take a few minutes to write down your list of ideas, problems, and solutions. But I wanted that structure, idea, problem, solution. And again, around the hall into the corners, the men's, ladies' rooms right out here, feel free to grab something to drink, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. There's 2,600 funded companies that we've tracked through a 5-year span to figure out which revenue models are the successful revenue models for tech. So the good news is there's 15. That's it. So when we get into month 4, your idea is unique, what you're doing is unique. How you're going to monetize it? Totally not unique. So services is number 1, commerce is number 2, subscription is number 3, marketplace is number 4. So basically what you're going to do is you're just going to pick a model based on who your customer is and what your market is. But when I meet with a company, I had one probably 6-7 months ago, they're like, we're inventing this new product and we're inventing a new revenue model. And I'm like, oh my God, you have just compounded the complexity of your success by a huge factor. Because the challenge of the business itself is a challenge. Trying to invent a new revenue model just makes it off the charts more challenging because there's no track record of that. So the concept there is a proxy. So this is a if this for that. So what you learn in the revenue model components is there's companies who've gone before you, there's similar markets or similar angles, and they've already monetized and created a path for you to follow for how you monetize. So that data set is 2,600 funded companies. There's about 240 plus companies who have failed. One of the things we talk about in the research section is using the Wayback Machine. Anybody familiar with the Internet Archive? So the Wayback Machine allows you to look at the last cache page of that company who failed. And universally, 70% plus of those companies who failed, you would go to their product page or their pricing page, and there would be no pricing page, there'd be no way to buy. Like, I understand what your product is, but I don't understand how to buy it. And it's like, that is just wacky. So one of the mistakes I'm gonna help you not make is that. Like, you just pick a way for the customer to buy, is one of the important ways to do it. So the data will skew that way. You can apply it to, I'll be planning physical products with you this year, and services. So let's talk about markets. So one of the things you'll hear very common in this case, the lamb is on the bottom, I'll get to that in a second. So the TAM is your total addressable market. And the question of this is, worldwide, what's the total addressable market of the customer, business or consumer, who could buy your product or service? Now if you're a service, and somebody in China wanted to buy it, oops, that's weird. That's what happens. It doesn't work, they don't speak English, right? So your TAM is everybody could buy your product, but now your SAM is limited to the fact that your service addressable market is you've only written the product in English. So my market size has come down. So, oh, you don't write in Portuguese for Brazil, your market size has come down. So not everybody in the world could buy your product. So if you were in the business of automotive parts and you only built headrests for the left or for the passenger seat, your market would be even smaller. So one of the common mistakes that we see in all investor pitches is people are like, this is $1 billion market. I'm like, maybe, but probably not. So the lamb, and the one I want you to start with is, of the people who could buy your product today, how big is the market? Not at scale, right? Because we're back to that up and to the right thing. So at scale, everybody could buy our product. It would be amazing, right? Office, Microsoft Office in multiple languages, not hosted on the cloud, embedded on every computer sold. Okay, well that's not everybody in the world, it's just every computer. And then it's every computer that's only on a Windows machine. Oh, but now with Office, right? But not previously with iPad, but now with iPad, right? So what you're doing is you're taking a market and saying, oh, my overall market is this big, but the market I can really sell to today is really down there. I'm actually more interested in that market with a vision for where you're going than I am interested in, it's a multi-billion-dollar market. So one of the companies that I'm on the board of has a product that could go to multiple industries. One of the industries is aviation. If they said it wrong, they'd say, well, the entire aviation spend for the global aviation market is this. Well, they're not selling airplanes to everybody. They're selling a small service that's part of the aviation industry. Not every airplane sold last year by Boeing and Airbus. But a lot of startups and a lot of startup founders will say, well, the total aviation spend is X billions of dollars. And I'm like, so? That's not your market. So what you're after in this process in the next 30 days is you're going to go identify who's the total addressable market, and most importantly, what's my launch addressable market? Who could use my product today in the language that it's in with the features that it has? How big is that market? Go from the bottom up. Don't go from the top down, because you'll be way more accurate and frankly way more believable to us as investors, because otherwise we're like, it's kind of a checkbox, right? You're like, our market is every airplane sold last year. Nope, and now you have a huge credibility gap and you're in a hole. And you have to prove to me that you actually know what you're doing. Because you started off with good points and then you went this way and I'm like, now I just don't believe you, okay? What are the market conditions of that market? Is the market big and growing? Is the market shrinking? So there's VCs I know in the Valley who will not invest in anything in the automotive industry because they're convinced that with autonomous vehicles coming, that anything where the model is based on people buying cars for themselves is a dying market. Now, is it dying in the next 5 or 10 years? No. But in their investment thesis, which by the way, every venture capital fund has, they have a thesis of how they invest. That's part of their thesis. So if you're like, we're in the autonomous software business and we're going to use autonomous software across all lines of transportation, including the Bell flying helicopter, autonomous vehicle thing, which I want one, it's really crazy. I don't, but I want a pilot, just first. Right? I'd like to know that there's somebody up in the front seat who actually knows what they're doing just in case the autonomous thing doesn't work. Even though I know, mathematically, I know the autonomous thing is better. Right? And just like, Tesla, it's going to be faster to respond than I am. But I still want somebody to sit in that chair. So, yeah.
Real quick, in terms of the timing part of this, if you're in the ideal number 4 score on the timing, does that mean you may have a hard time finding the data on the market?
Correct.
Or what you were doing?
Yeah, so the question for those who didn't hear, if the timing is such that you can't find data, is that a good thing or a bad thing, and where do you find it? So one of the things that you'll see folks do, anybody familiar with Gartner or Forrester? Data? Okay. If Gartner or Forrester has written about your market, you're probably too late. Because by the time they're covering it, there's already incumbents in the space. So it will be a challenge for some of you to go find market relevant data, and the way that you find it is to look at proxies for it. So if I'm looking at overall aerospace spend, then I want to know how many companies are doing new engines, or how many engines did Rolls-Royce do. That's super weird. Because it's not going on my screen. So you need to, if it's hard to find the data, it's probably actually a good thing, because nobody's there yet. So you're looking for proxies for the data. So what are the other outside industry indicators or outside market indicators that validate your idea, or at least is plausible? So, and you get a chance to bounce it around people at your table at the halfway point. So, by the way, niche market and small markets totally suck, right? Because the size of the market there is just really hard to get to. And if you think about it from a sports analogy, which I don't do a lot of, by the way, it's like number of pitches. So from the batter's perspective, if it's a small market, you just don't have a lot of pitches, right? But if it's a big market, if your product's off a little bit and you can pivot the product, you'll have another chance to swing the bat. But if it's off, you don't have a lot. We talked about markets, headwind, tailwinds, a little bit on the scoring. Is the market in your favor? Do you think it's a trend that's in your favor or not? Is spend happening there? One of the things I like about CES is I'm always looking for the thing this year that everybody else is going to copy next year. So like last year's thing was, Nissan had a car that was configurable and it would come pick you up. So the idea was autonomous vehicle, you could configure it for health, or you could configure it for a conference room, or you could configure it for something else. This year's there's like 50 of them, right? Everybody's copied it. So I'm always curious every year, like what's going to be the thing that is going to be copied next year? And that's always intriguing to me from a market trends perspective. So if you don't have hard data of market, you can look at it and say, well, here's where I think the trends are coming together and why I think our market timing is good. Like consumer behavior says they want to buy this type of thing, right? And we'll talk about that as we get to research, because sometimes what consumers tell you and what they actually do are really different things. So, who's your customer? So if you're not sure if you're doing a product or a service yet, it's going to determine if it's a product or a service. What can you deliver and ship in a reasonable time frame? So from a lean methodology, lean startup methodology perspective, the idea is what's the feature I need to ship first to get this customer to say yes and become a customer, and then build on and continue to ship. Who's going to pay the bill? I think so 2 years ago when we did this session, the idea of Facebook going, they're a business to consumer company. They're a business to business company and they just sold you out. Now we all know that. 2 years ago, people were like, oh, I'm the customer. No, you're the product, right? And 2 years ago, that was hard to explain, and today we're just like, yeah, I get it. If it's free, I'm the product, right? So who pays for the product? And we'll talk about it in month 4 as it relates to revenue models. So advertising revenue models are great. They work at scale. They don't work at launch, because you need 1 million uniques a month to hit your website to drive revenue. So it's a legit revenue model, but it's not a legit revenue model at launch. It's only a legit revenue model at scale. Or big data. So anybody they want to go into the big data business? Yeah? Okay. So the idea of big data is great, but you have to have the big data to sell. And if you don't have it, you need to find the funding to get to the 18 months worth of runway to get to big data. So again, some revenue models work at scale, some don't work, or only work at scale. So who pays, who makes money, and how do you make money? One of the things you're going to find out is how and why do they buy. Ultimately, consumers are wacky because they make emotional decisions and back it up with logic. They don't make logical decisions. And for some of you who are engineers and not marketers, you're going to write your product spec and you're going to write, feature, 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 this is amazing, it's so logical, everybody will say yes. No, they back it up with logic, but they buy with emotion. So, who's going to buy your product, why are they going to buy your product, and what are they going to be willing to pay for your product? So a thought here that you need to know is, are they searching for your product today, or are you building a product that no one's ever seen before? How many of you are building a product no one's ever seen? Completely new. Okay, legit. I built one of those ones, I ended up selling the company, not a great return, no indication or projection for you. One of the things that changes in your marketing and sales is if you're building a product no one's ever seen before, you have to do outbound marketing, because nobody knows that you're building it. Nobody's out doing Google search words for your product because they don't know it exists. So it changes your model. It means that when you do marketing and sales, you have to do outbound. Inbound's not an option. If there's lots of traffic in the keywords that you're buying, you can go buy those keywords and buy traffic and test out your hypothesis on pricing. So some of you will be able to, in a month, buy some Facebook ads for $300 or $400 and validate or invalidate whether people care about your idea or not. If you're building a product no one's ever seen before, that's not the mechanic you can use. Okay. So we'll spend more time about that in month 4 as well. So questions about markets, concepts about markets. So one of the things you're going to go do in the next 30 days is to start to define and say, this is our overall market size. You'll get the email tomorrow that says, here's your deliverables for month 1. Go figure out who your target market is, who your customer is, how they're going to buy, and where they are. If they're a consumer, you're going to define them by a demographic. What's the gender, what's their age, where will you find them, where are they sitting, what are they doing? If they're a business, you're going to be like, oh, we're going to sell to the IT managers at Fortune 500 companies. Oh, we're going to sell them to small business owners, or we're going to sell to these types of people. So you're literally going to make a hypothesis and say, this is my customer segment. You'll probably be wrong, and that's okay. And as you go do customer validation, you will get more refined. But don't start off with everybody's my customer, because if everybody's your customer, nobody's your customer. Right? Question, Becca?
How do you get through the noise?
How do you get through the noise?
Get through the noise in terms of if you're trying to market a product or service to a customer. There is so many marketing messages thrown at us, like on our mobile devices, on the internet.
Yeah, so the question is how do you get through the noise in marketing?
How do you
So,
penetrate that?
yeah, so we'll talk about that also in month 4. So we go through both the economics, marketing, and sales, because what you're going to have is you're going to have a thesis of what you're trying to prove. Because as you come out of the program in month 6 and the following 2 months, you're basically, one of the mindsets you're going to get through this process is you always have a thesis, right? So my thesis is this customer wants to buy it, and this is why they want to buy it, and this is what they're going to buy, and then you're going to go test it, and you're like, that's not quite right. Like it's 80% right or 60% right, and you're going to keep testing that marketing messaging, product positioning, and that. And so in month 4 we'll outline on that because it's really getting it down to what's the one pager, what's the value proposition, and then you're going to go test the value proposition, and you're going to come back and go, well that didn't land, but that did. And you're going to iterate on the marketing messaging. And you probably have somebody in your group who's a better marketer than you are, and vice versa from an engineering perspective. Other questions on markets? Just general big picture questions on markets? Yeah?
So is there books written on markets and market segmentation?
Yeah, I'll have a whole list of both blogs and books for you, kind of as you come out of every month. So it's probably a good observation to state too, as I was going through and doing some writing on getting it to the editor from the book, one of the things I realized is I hit a lot of topics at a very cursory level, and then every month I've given you books that go deep on the topic. So if you really want to do research, here's 3 great resources on research. Or if you really want to do branding, here's great resources on branding. Because I'm not trying to go too deep into those topics because there's varying levels of experience here. So you'll have a list of resources every month that come out at following the session that has both books and blogs and other resources. And by the way, think of this as an open source perspective. You're like, that's really great, but here's another great book. Send it to me on Slack and I'll just add it to the list. Because the point of it is, if you have a great resource, like there's a great website called Namecheck. There's no E in the check part, but you can go in and type in a domain name and it'll give you every domain that's open and it'll show you what social profiles are open in one spot. So I'll know if is the Twitter handle taken, is Facebook taken, is Instagram taken. It's just like, it's a great resource and tool. So as you have tools like that, let me know what they are, I'll add them to the list. Okay, let's talk about research. Very close to market is research. From a staging perspective, please be aware that you are not the customer. So anybody heard the Henry Ford quote? If I ask people what they wanted, they'd say it's a faster horse. Or you can have any color you want as long as it's black. Before the internet, that was true. Now there's options. You can get a faster horse. So your idea, so please don't throw Henry Ford in my face. Actually, my grandfather owned the first Ford garage in 1911 in Camas, Washington. It was amazing. I have a photo of it I will show you at some point. So he's standing behind the motorcycle, and in front of the shop there's 4 barrels, because that was the gas station, because gas stations didn't exist, right? So the idea of, hey, if I'd ask my customer what I wanted, no, you're going to go ask your customer a lot about what they want, and you're going to get very close with the customers. You're going to build a list over the next 6 months. You're going to go from, anybody have a list of potential customers today? Rocking. So my goal is to get you to 200, 500, or 1,000 potential customers that every month you send them an update that says, hey, here's my update this month, here's what we shipped, here's what we're going to ship, and here's where I could use your help. And what you're gonna find is, most people won't respond to you. But the people who do respond to you are gonna give you great insights as to what feature you should ship next and why people are going to buy. Because if you had a list of 1,000 people who would buy your product today, you would be like, I know a lot about it. So over the next 6 months, you're gonna build that list. It's part of the mechanics you're gonna go through. So there's lots of research methodologies. The Magic Quadrant is a Gartner model. You always wanna be in the top right of that, by the way. If you ever do a 4-quadrant box and you're not in the top right, you totally missed the Magic Quadrant angle. There's a concept called Blue Ocean, a great book called Blue Ocean Research. And there'll be links in the one that comes out to you. From a methodology perspective, it doesn't really matter to me which method you use as so much as you do the research. And you go out and do, there's nothing worse, like, from any investor's perspective, where you're like, I'm doing my pitch and I'm like, oh, you're like so-and-so. And you're like who? Like, that's a bad sign. Like, I am so committed to my idea, I haven't even taken the time to go do the research about who's come here before me. Or worse yet, the companies who have died before me. Like, if you're standing in a graveyard or whistling past the graveyard, you should know who died before you and how much money they raised. Because if they raised $100 million, if you're doing the next juicing company and they lost $125 million, like, that's funny. Like, when you leave the room, we will laugh, right? You're like, and they didn't even know their competitors. You're gonna spend some time on that. You're gonna create a Google Doc. And by the way, in some of these things, I'm just gonna say some stuff to go do. If you wanna make it more elegant later, go for it. But right now, create a Google Doc from a competitive list perspective. You're gonna go and in that Google sheet, you're gonna create a list of every competitor. You're gonna put the company name, their URL, you're gonna put a link to their Crunchbase profile. You're gonna put when they raised money, how many employees they have, what their product is, and you're basically gonna start to build out a profile of every potential competitor and how much money they've raised. And you're gonna need to know it because when you come and pitch, we're gonna say, oh, well, who are you like? Well, here are our big competitors. Where are you different? You're gonna be like, here's their product features, here's my product features. How much money they raised? This is really cool. Who did they raise from? For us, that matters. Like, oh, they raised from Andreessen Horowitz. You're like, pretty smart money, right? Oh, hey, they haven't raised any money, or they've only raised from strategic investors. All those things matter. So you're just basically gonna start to build out your profile and you're gonna update it every month. As you do more research, you're gonna add to that list. If you wanna make it elegant later and put it in an Airtable or something else, cool. Right now, it's really about the work, not about the presentation. So, I wanna fix that when we go on break. So Crunchbase is gonna be your tool of choice, it's free. If you wanna pay for stuff, you can, you shouldn't at this point. And what you're really after, as you do that too, is talking about what are the features, what are the products, and what are the prices. So go to the pricing page, look at what the price is, because it needs to inform your decision. Cheaper may not be your go-to-market strategy. You may not be the cheapest product when you launch, and that's totally okay. But you do need to know what other competitors are charging for it. Do they offer free or freemium? Is there a free trial? And you're gonna use that all for competitive market analysis as you build it. Okay? Yeah, go for it.
What if the market you're operating in, everybody holds their cards close to their chest and they don't publish prices?
Great question. So the question is, if you're the market you're going after, nobody publishes prices, and they hold the numbers pretty close to their chest. So I would encourage you not to lie and ask for a demo and ask for price. But I would encourage you to post on Quora and ask people to give you feedback. So one of the things you can probably do, if you're not familiar with Quora, it's a question and answer site. So you can post a question there, you can post it anonymously. Like, hey, I'm really curious about the price of blah, blah, blah. And what you'll find is somebody will say, oh, we saw a proposal from them and their pricing was X. Or, hey, I used to work there and the pricing was Y. So you may or may not get an answer to it, but I think Quora is a great resource for you to do that. And it will inform some of those decisions as well. So Google searches tend to be great. And it's amazing what you find if the company is public. Look at what's called their K1. So their quarterly filings, they will do things like release risk factors. Well, those are awesome for you to know. Like, our risk factors are this, or our cost of customer acquisition is this. So they will put stuff into their quarterly filings if it's a public company as well. And I encourage you to look there. Okay. So Crunchbase will be your friend, you'll get great at it actually. So from a pattern matching standpoint, one of the things, so this is actually Crunchbase. So the ranking of companies, and what you're after as you start to go through this is, what are the things you're noticing about trends? Who's investing in their companies? What are the things that are common between those companies? So you'll find in Crunchbase that there's things like categories.
Hi, I'm Bixby. It's great to
Oh,
meet you.
Bixby's here. Ever? Yeah. So category here is like consumer electronics or mobile. So the reason I bring this up is because when we're doing a comparison and market research about you, I want to know, oh, you're a B2B software company, or you're a B2C mobile company, or you're a gaming company. I'm actually going and putting you in categories because I'm looking for your comps. And if you're like, we don't fit any category, my answer is, probably not the case. But what you're after as the founder is you want to know who's invested in companies like this before in the past, especially if they've exited. So if there's a company that has been in your track record and they've already exited, and you're like, oh, these angel investors invested in this deal, or this angel group invested in this company, then you can call folks in that angel group and say, hey, I saw that you invested in this company. I'd love to get some feedback from what you learned by that investment. Because you'll find people who are predisposed from a pattern matching perspective and an angel perspective, is if I've invested in a category before and I've made money at it, I like the category. Now, I've invested in a category before and I lost my ass in it, the answer is, I don't like your deal. It has nothing to do with you, especially as a venture investor. If we invested in a company in a category and we lost money, and you bring me a deal that's just like that, but different and better, I have to explain to my limited partners why I'm investing again in a category where we lost money. Am I gonna do that? No. Like, it doesn't matter how good your deal is, or that it's better now and the timing's better. It doesn't matter. So you need to figure out who's made money in that market before, and if I've lost money, just know that I'm probably gonna say no. So I sent Brad Feld a note. Brad runs Founder Group in Boulder, used to be on my board. And I sent him a note to a deal I thought he would like, and I'm like, hey, here's this deal, what do you think? And he's like, yeah, that was it. It was just a no. And I'm like, can I give him a little something? He's like, tell him it's me, it's not them. I'm like, I totally get it, but for the category, it was like, yeah, I just don't like the category. It doesn't have anything to do with, is your idea good or not? It has to do with, I just don't like the category. So for us, we don't invest in companies that aren't in the Northwest. So I'll get notes from people on LinkedIn, hey, we have this amazing company, and they haven't looked at my investment thesis at all. Like in the first paragraph on our website, we invest in technology companies that are in the Mountain West regions at this stage. So geography, technology, and stage. Notes come over from people, and they call me Jim instead of Dave, which is not, I've been called worse. But I'm like, if you're gonna copy and paste, like at least pay attention to it. And like, do the research to figure out that I don't invest in that category or that geography or that stage. Because it's a waste of your time as well, and I'm just gonna tell you no. And people are like, oh, well, can you refer me to somebody? No, I don't know you. Would you mind making an introduction? I don't know you, I've never met you, I know nothing about you. Right? So that's, you have to put money into that before you actually get to take money out of that account. Otherwise you're just overdrawn. Right? And that I just delete them. Right? It's like, part of me wants to respond and go, you're killing me. Like, this is so bad. They do. So if an analyst has written a report, what do they say? If a company failed, why did it fail? So you can send a note to a founder, you can send a note to an investor and go, hey, what did you learn about that? Oh, market timing was really bad. Right? Or one I ran across recently was customer concentration. We had one really big customer, a company like Walmart, and they didn't buy us, they bought our competitor, and that's it. We're done. Right? So customer concentration is a bad thing. The Wayback Machine is something that it's always good entertainment. You can give $15 a year or a nice little donation. It's free. And basically the Wayback Machine will show you the last cached page of that company website. And you can walk your way back to their first cached page and their last cached page. So if you're asking the question about how do we do marketing and what's our marketing positioning, I would look at the competitor, and then I would look 6 months back and 6 months back and 6 months back, and I would look at how their messaging has changed. Like you're like, oh, they started with this thesis and positioning, but over time they morphed it this way. You save yourself 2 years worth of market research, and they probably spent a hell of a lot more than you're gonna spend on the market research. So, just saying. One of my favorites, we have no competition. Really? So our competition is status quo. Okay, I kind of get that. But the idea of we have no competition, as an investor, I look at that and go, it's probably not a market I'm willing to touch. Like if you're competitive and here's why, totally happy to talk to you about it. But if the answer is no competition, it's a challenge. All right. Let's talk about bias for a minute. So these are a few of the biases that are available in the decision criteria. So we have confirmation bias as human beings. We like to confirm that our hypothesis is true and that we're generally good people, which will also make you completely blind to part of this process. Because you're like, I want to talk to people who love me and tell me yes, which is great, except if you're going to spend the next 6 months or 6 years of your life on an idea, I would want to know, like, if I'm going to kill this, I want to kill it fast. Or if I want the product I'm going to kill, but the market, I'm going to stay in the market and find a new product to sell to that market. So just be aware that you have some biases that you're bringing into this. And one of the things you're going to do as a group of the folks that are around the table with you is there's the, any poker players in the room? Okay, a few. So the thesis here is, you want to bet? Because you're like, I am going to state my belief with passion and conviction, right? And I need somebody who's like, huh, really, you want to bet? You're like, well, what do you mean, Patrick? Well, I think your belief structure is probably wrong. That's kind of offensive. Well, no, only if you don't want the truth. Again, you want to take 6 years to figure it out. So I would encourage you to get in, as you get to know the people around your tables and meet in between, to ask the question of, hey, do you want to bet? Like, I don't think that's probably true. But you have to give permission to do that. So part of the reason I don't weigh in on your ideas in the first few months is I don't want you to be like, Dave told me my idea was a shitty little idea and I shouldn't do it. Even if it's true. Because you are not a bad person, your idea sucks. But you need to go figure that out for yourself. Because that self-realization of the process is not about me telling you you have a good or bad idea. Because you know more about the market than I know. You know more about the customer than I know. I could be completely wrong, right? That's why I don't weigh in ideas early. Because it could be great, you're just explaining it poorly. Which happens, by the way, for investors, it happens all the freaking time, right? Somebody will leave off their market, or somebody will leave off their pricing, or somebody will leave off competitive. You know, and you've totally forgotten to put it on the slide, and I'm like, I guess they don't have any competitors, right? But I don't know your market. So you may just be explaining it poorly. So one of the things you're going to do as you go through this process is challenge each other to, I think you maybe have a belief there that may be giving you a bias. That's okay. If I have a bias, I want to know. Because I want to figure it out, either move past it or kill the idea quickly. All right. One of the big questions is, where do I source the idea for the research? So I would look for, if you can find research firms, I think it's okay, but probably late, but it's still good data for you to figure it out. If you can find market trend data, that's useful. I would start with my competitors and work my way backwards to what data are they referencing. I would look at blogs and who's writing and are thought leaders in the topics that you want to follow. So Lifehacker is an example. People who are writing about themes that I want to learn about, or themes that are about your market. So here's the deal about blogs. People still write them, people still read them. I have about 180 blog posts on my blog. Last year I had 24,000 readers, somewhere in there, a couple thousand readers a month on average. I had 7 comments. So if you wanted to, so I have a guy named Tomas Tongas at Redpoint Ventures. Anybody here at Tom? Super geeky ex-Google guy, super smart. So his blog, you can't respond to his blog anymore, but it used to be you could. And I totally fanboyed it. Right, I'm like, this is a great blog post, incredibly well written. Have you thought about this thing as well? Or have you seen this site before? So I was trying to add value, not just be a complete fanboy. I was trying to actually add value. So I was like, hey, that was a great resource, thanks for mentioning it. And then a couple weeks later, I'm like, oh, this is a great blog post as well. Have you seen this resource? So twice. Then I saw that he was speaking at an event that I was going to go to in Vancouver, Canada. I sent him a note. Tom, I made a couple comments on your blog over the last few months, blah, blah. I see you're a speaker at this event in Vancouver. I would love to meet you for a beer. And he's like, I would love to meet you for a beer. And I'm like, I just fanboyed him. But when I get 9 posts, when I get 9 comments out of 2,000 readers a month on my blog, and you comment twice, I totally know who you are. I'm not the only one. So if you find somebody who's blogging about a topic as thought leadership that you like, just go in and comment on their blog. Say, that was great, thanks, that was an awesome blog, thanks for sharing that. Do it 2 or 3 times, they're gonna like, I know who Lindsay is. Like, she's one of my fans, I love Lindsay, she's amazing. You're like, and then you're like, hey, have you thought about blogging about this? Right, because I'm always looking for prompts. I usually take them from things like this where I have office hours, where I'm like, oh, that's actually a theme, I should write something about that as a theme. Right, those are my prompts. So office hours tend to be my prompts. And if it's your topic and it's just specific to you, I won't write about it. But if it's like your topic is like a meta topic for a bunch of people, yeah, I'll write about it. Because then when I meet somebody for coffee, I don't have to talk to them. I can be like, you know what, can you do the awkward co-founder discussion blog? Because then we can talk about something that's unique to you and you can just go read the blog. Right? But yeah, 2 or 3 times, find somebody who's a thought leader in your area. It's scary how well it works. All right, so those are places to look for thought leadership, look for who's writing about the topic. If they're writing about the topic, they're looking for followers and comments. Same is true on Twitter. The cow's out of the barn, but I finally quit Facebook after they sold me out one more time. So you won't find me on Facebook or Instagram for that matter, or WhatsApp. But you can find me on Twitter. Just find people who are talking about the stuff that you want to write about and follow them and see what they're following. Give you a place to start. All right, we're gonna take a few minutes, come back and talk about pitching and getting ready for deliverables for next month. So you get about 5 minutes for a break. We'll come back and wrap stuff up. Every month we'll be done at 9 and we'll be out of here by 9:30, just so you know what to expect, okay? See you in a couple.
Hey, mind if I pitch you? I'll grab a chair. So, I started a robotics business, auto robotics, Alliance Matrix. We got 9 different VCs involved, and I have since moved on as the board member and consulting Vivid Robotics. I've already started robotics company. I really like this space. It's like software packaged in the early 2000s. You know what I mean? Like, really good at mobile development. I feel like it would be a waste of money. So this is just kind of a seed project. Not really anything itself. I want to make. So originally we were making robots for the point of sale quick service restaurant, which was a way that we made and about half of that is quick service. There's a similar size market. It's house making homes in commercial or kind of like skyscrapers or linear painting. Well, they're 10% of my time. No, it's a completely different. So, I mean, they're making quick service restaurants, and I want to make, honestly, the technology. And I also haven't signed anything that says that I wouldn't be making robots. I'm the one who authorized the employment agreements with everybody. But really, what I want to do is display for consumer to get their house together, as a bunch of times, you have to spend like once every 5 to 10 years or something like that.
Back from a 27-day vacation.
Really? I went for 17. Where did you go?
Section I'm going to walk you through, and we'll be out of here. And if you're up for it, 2 blocks away is a place called the Dillard Room. We usually go there at the end of month 6 for beers or drinks or whatever you want to do. So if you're up for it, some folks are up for it, I'm happy to go and do that tonight as well. So I want to take a quick minute and talk about pitching and explaining your idea and explaining your pitch, because your pitch at this point is the critical first step of can I recruit a co-founder, can I sell a product, can I communicate what it is I'm trying to do. So we're going to talk briefly about pitching just to give you a little primer on it. We'll talk more about pitching in future months. But when you're out talking to people about your idea, I'm going to give you some, nice catch though. It didn't come all the way out. So I had a chance at one point to go meet with a company called Warburg Pincus. Warburg is one of the largest private equity companies in the world. Samantha Chan was their executive managing director and manager of that particular fund. And so I had a chance to go to New York, meet with Samantha, pitch her on it was my first company actually. And I flew to New York just for that one meeting. Stayed overnight, flew back. So I'm gonna save you about $5,000 in advice plus all the time spent. So I pitched Samantha. The company was growing super fast. And she walked me back to the elevator and said, Dave, I love your passion for the market. We like this market. I can't repeat your message to my partners, so I won't. And I'm going down the elevator going, shit, that was just like, right? And it wasn't that she didn't like me or I didn't connect with her. It's just that I took the art of something that was simple and made it complex, right? And as founders, we do that. Like we're stuck in the soup, right? So if, you ever seen those multicolored balls of yarn, right? That's kind of where we as founders live. I'm partway between launch and scale, and I'm thinking about the feature I'm going to ship next, and I'm thinking about the interaction I had with my lead developer earlier, or the feature my first customer asked me, and I'm like, somewhere in the midst of that, I'm in the middle of it. So your true north in all this is how do you pitch your idea in such a way that somebody can repeat your message? So your judge of success on that is when I leave this message, when I leave this meeting, can that person repeat my message to their boss? So if I write an angel check, I have to go home and explain to my wife why I'm writing you a check for $25,000. And if I'm like, now that I think about it, I can't really explain it. The answer is, you can call and follow up with me and leave check-in messages forever, and my answer is, I ain't gonna write a check. Right? If I can't explain if I'm an associate at a venture fund, whose career is based on their ability to rightly articulate your idea to my boss, and Gary comes to me and says, hey, did you see any interesting deals this week? And I'm like, I met with a really sharp founder, but I can't explain what they do. What's the longevity of my opportunity at the firm? Like, bad. So I'm gonna say, nope, Gary, I didn't see any interesting deals this week. Right? And you're like, I had such a great meeting with Dave, and he asked me to call and follow up in 2 weeks. And the answer is no. That's just human nature. So your thing here is you need to be able to explain your company and your idea in such a way that people can remember it. So the quick primer on that is I'm going to start you with my favorite Twitter person, who happens to be a dinosaur who types in all caps. So I'm blanking on the name. I have a caching problem. I don't have a memory problem. It's just a caching problem. So things will come back to me, but sometimes they escape. Fake Grimlock. So there you go. Fake Grimlock is somebody you should follow on Twitter. So his point was, if you have a choice between two things and you get to be white bread or bacon, be bacon. So if you don't eat pork, I don't mean to be offensive, but just if you have a choice between those two things, don't be white bread, be bacon. Be memorable. Like, do something that's like, how do I remember you? So in that case, if you have a choice, be bacon. So you're going to clearly communicate your idea in a way that helps you recruit your co-founder or gets your idea funded or ask for a company or ask for whatever your clear ask is. That's why number 10 on that list is, do you have a clear ask? When you send me an email and say, can we get together? I know you have an agenda. It's so much more useful if you tell me what it is. Like, I can say, I'm not the right person for you to meet with. You should meet with so-and-so. Or I'm looking for a technical co-founder. Awesome, you should meet with so-and-so. Like, I'm happy to connect with people. I think an email that's successful is just as good as an hour-long coffee and saves both of us time and lots of commuting and traffic, especially next week when they close that thing down. So you want to start strong with your message and be memorable. Any journalists, former journalists in the room? So awesome, me too. So I learned journalism when they talked about don't bury the lead of your story. Because we used to have to write in column inches back before the web. Right? So if somebody cut your story and the point of your story was in paragraph 4 and they cut off paragraph 4, people would be like, that's the most confusing story ever. So is the headline of your story memorable? Does it say what you do? Is your first paragraph actually at the top of your story or not? In a lot of founders, we bury our leads and we just have to have somebody else read our content and go, was it clear? Did it tell the story? So find somebody who will be a good editor for you in the process. So when you finish the meeting with me, what question do you want me to ask? So what the common one I ask, and I'll tell you, not every investor will tell you, is, what do you do again? Now, what you wanted me to be asking is, how can I write a check? But where you left me was, I don't know what you do. Like, you covered lots of ground, and you went very circular, and you're like, we're B2B and B2C, and we could be this and we could be that, and these guys got funded, so I'm gonna talk about them, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell you do. Right? But the question you want me to be left with is, oh my God, that's amazing, how do I write you a check? So know going into it that you have a clear ask and you know what that ask is. So the age-old rule in investment, especially VC, is if you wanted advice, ask for a check. And if you want a check, ask for advice. So our process to write a check is going to take a series of time. Most of you are super early. The fastest company we've ever had come out of this program raised $1 million 2 months after they finished it, which is really awesome. And he'll come in at some point and talk with you guys. He didn't have a co-founder, by the way, when he came in month 1. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. How'd you do it? He's like, you gave us a list of stuff to do, and I just was like, I'm just gonna go crush this list of shit to do because I don't know what else to do, so I'm just gonna go do it. I'm like, dude, that's crazy. But they're doing great. So I'm glad for that. So what question do you want to ask and why? Yeah.
What startup is that?
I'll actually have him come in and talk to you guys in the next couple months.
Secret guest.
So, yeah, they've been in GeekWire and in the virtual reality space, so they're augmented reality actually. So, yeah, they're doing great. So, but for you guys, it's really about, hey, what's the question and what's the objective? What do you want to come out of the meeting with? If you're like, hey, I would like to get you on my monthly email list and send you a monthly email and an update. That's awesome, I love those, right? You'd be surprised how many people don't send them, by the way. It's crazy. I don't know how many you get, Gary. It's like, the ones who do, I'm like, that's really cool. Like, you're making good progress. And it gets to a point, I'm like, we should talk, right? But you'll get investors who are like, I'm super happy to follow along, and like if the timing's just wrong, you're just too early for us now, but you keep me informed, that's great. So we're building a relationship in some ways. Some of it's virtual, some of it's physical. But what we're trying to do is say, I want to build a relationship and hear how you're making progress. If you don't send updates, I interpret that as you're not making any progress. Maybe you are, but I don't know. You didn't tell me. So what question do you want to ask at the end of the thing? So I'm going to have you write out your pitch. This is my Mad Libs version of your pitch. This is the elevator version. You're at 49. You're going to go to 1. Somebody's going to be like, hey, nice to meet you. What do you do? And this is the string on the back I'm going to have you pull. And by the end of the 6 months, you're going to be like, this is, when somebody says, what do I do? Hey, my name's Dave. The problem we're solving is for founders. Our product called Lumeric is designed for our target customer founders to actually have data to compare their companies to like companies and know if they're raising money at the right time and at what valuation. Cool. We make money by selling a subscription to that service and then selling the data back to other large enterprises like governments. We're going to win because Sean and I are just a kick-ass team and we have a lot of experience in the space. It's just something that somebody can remember and repeat. Can you get more complex? Of course you can. Does that serve your purpose? Probably not. If I'm just convinced you're smart, I just walk away and go, he's super smart. I don't really know what he does, but he's super smart. Right? So I'm going to have you take a couple minutes right now, write your pitch. You're going to improve on this every month, but at least now your mom will understand what you do. There's still hope. So take a few minutes to write in your pitch, fill in the blanks here for you. And I'm going to give a few of you a chance to read your pitches, but if you ad-lib it and don't ad-lib it, I'm not going to let you do it. Like, I need you to read it from here, not like, oh, I can totally wing it. No. There's a process to follow. So, by the way, this is the same format you're going to use to introduce yourself to the mentors next month, and the next month, and the next month. Because it's important that they understand what you're trying to do, and before they ask for your research and what you did and what you accomplished, it's like, so this is your chance to give them the, oh, I understand where you fit. What do you do? So, anybody true who wants to come up and be the first person to pitch? Come on. Again, you need to stick to this format. I will take the microphone away. Even though I know you're special. Go for it.
Hi, my name is Slava. Have you ever thought about how many batteries surround us?
The problem I solve is... Sorry, I gotta go back and work on writing it down. So I can ask questions. So again, this is back to, I'm gonna walk you backwards. Thanks for giving me such a good example. What question do you want me to ask when I'm done with your pitch? What do you do? So, nope. So, anybody else want to come up and give it a try? Come on up. I warned him.
I actually talked to you last month 6 last time when I met you, but starting fresh. Okay, my name is Dennis. The problem we are solving is giving fishermen a way to enter a contest, participate in a fishing contest / derby and win money. Our product is a mobile app for a platform for them to do so. Platform for them to host or join derbies. Our target customer is all fishermen. We will be making money by taking 5% of the winnings of each purse, and once it's large enough, there will be some ad money, hopefully. Our team is right because I am an expert in the industry, I have a strong marketing partner, and we'll be looking for a tech partner.
Awesome. How many of you understand what he does? Yes! Mission accomplished, mission 1 accomplished. So I don't mean to trivialize it, but what's important about it is, so one thing I will ask here, where do you need help?
I'm looking for a UI UX designer.
Great, awesome. So, because now I know who he is, what he does, what he's all about, and what he needs. So, but that didn't take 30 minutes or coffee, right? I didn't have to, right? So thank you for nailing it, that's great. Who else wants to go? No?
Hi, I'm Chris. The problem I'm solving is the cost and length of enterprise technology evaluation and sales. Our product, Olive, automates the process of technology consulting and is designed for our target customers of IT buyers at medium-sized enterprise companies. We make money by taking subscription from buyers to help them easily evaluate software and selling previously unavailable data to vendors. Our team is awesome because we have years of experience in the space, have worked together for years, and have complementary skills.
Awesome, well done. Where can you use some help?
We're really looking for advice for how we can scale. We have services right now, and we want to understand how we can really rocket ship it.
Awesome, great, good job. So a couple notes for everybody out there in the audience. So give me your name one more time.
Chris.
Chris. So not everybody is Chris's target customer. So he shouldn't change his language to address everybody in the audience in the room, because what he's after is a specific customer type, and each of you are after a specific customer type. And if you don't understand the words he's using in the market he's selling to, that's okay, because you're not his target customer, right? But if you ask, what's the clear ask at the end is, hey, we need some help to do X, and you're like, I know how to do that. So yeah, I say that so that as you all, you can go ahead and grab a seat. As you all give your pitch, recognize you're not trying to pitch so that everybody understands you. You're trying to pitch so either the target investor understands you or your target customer understands you. But not everybody needs to understand you, okay? You don't have to be everything to everybody. Couple more? I need a woman to pitch. We're skewing, come on up. By the way, good percentages, ladies, thanks for showing up. I love that. We typically run about 40% female, which I love, it's awesome. And lots of business cards.
Hello, my name is Lindsay T.H. Jackson, and the problem I'm solving is that there's no collection of content, tools, products, and resources specifically for women of all income levels to support them in achieving their health and wellness goals. Our product is a content-driven marketplace platform, Azalea, designed for our target customer of low to middle income working women. We make money from commissions on products and bookings, and our team is the right team because we have a combined 20 plus years of health and wellness industry experience and industry-specific IP. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was really blown away about what you said around the outbound marketing for a new idea. So that's really where we're running into the snag. We have sort of competitors.
Right. But no one knows they're looking for you because they don't know you exist.
Women have never had anything like this, so they're not searching for, I want the best place to find women's health and wellness resources.
Anybody here at Outbound Marketing? Okay. All right, we'll spend some time on marketing and sales for sure, because there's definitely
let's do it. So good job, well done.
So, again, we understand what she does, who her target market is. You may not be in the target market, but that's okay. Couple more? I'm gonna skew towards, I get guys hanging in first, so no problem. There's always extra guys I can call, ladies. So I just finished a book called Quiet. Did you raise your hand, Cynthia? Yeah, oh, your hand behind the microphone, I couldn't see you. So I just finished a book, just finished a book called Quiet. One of the things you'll learn about me is, one of my goals annually is to read 100 books a year. It started in a very quirky fashion, but Quiet is a book about introverts in the land of people who never stop talking. So if you're an introvert in the room, this is a safe place for you. It's not about being just a good pitch. Because if you have good data, like if you look at people who are good CEOs, it's not just extroverts that are good CEOs, thankfully. There's way too much of that. So here you go.
All right, so my name is Faiza, and I'll preface this by saying that I came to this event purely for fact-finding, so this isn't really my idea. Hi, my name is Faiza, and the problem that I'm solving is last-mile delivery for brick-and-mortar retailers. Our product is designed for tech-savvy e-commerce shoppers who desire on-demand delivery for their most coveted brands. We make money by charging delivery fees, retailer transactions, and access to our data platform. Our team is right because it's comprised of, as of right now, I guess myself, and I spent a year at Uber doing driver-side operations, so I was one of 20 people who dealt with all the crazy Uber drivers in Seattle. And I'm currently an employee at a company called Zoom, so we're solving last-mile delivery, but completely different area. So it's bake on the way trucks, so food basically. Thank you. So I'm actually looking for a technical co-founder. I'm technical when it comes to front-end design and front-end development, but I'm looking for someone who is more well-versed as far as back-end technologies go. So thank you.
Good job.
Okay. I'll take one more guy. Come on up. You'll have a chance to pitch, by the way, every month they're kind of a progression of forms, but you'll use this format every month as you talk to the mentors to give the mentors context for what you're talking about, okay?
Thanks, Dave. Hi, I'm Kevin, and the problem I'm solving is to help you record and reference all the things that don't fit in your head. Our product is a simple, no-friction, 100% indexed, semi-structured notebook, and it's designed for target customers of developers and working professionals. We make money through a monthly subscription fee based on line count, and our team is the right team because I am very obsessed over note-taking and have dedicated a good chunk of my life to using every single product that is out there, and I realize that nothing out there quite fits my needs and also the needs of a bunch of people that I know. And I could use help in marketing this when it is ready and for people to beta test it.
So only meta feedback on that one is stay away from things like we're dead simple, friction-free. The answer is the market will tell you that, but when you say that, it usually means you're not. So at least that's the first thing that goes off in my head. So when somebody's like, well, it's dead simple, and I'm like, probably not. So, all right, we practice pitches. So next session, I know we're talking about, so next session we're gonna move to WeWork Labs on 4th. Anybody from WeWork Labs here tonight? Awesome, welcome. All right, so next session we're gonna continue our partnership with WeWork Labs with Elizabeth and team there, so we will be at 925 4th. WeWork will have some benefits for you all as well to be hang out at WeWork Labs and that sort of thing, so you get a chance to see their space. That'll be the next session. This is what you're gonna get an email tomorrow from a references standpoint. You're gonna get a list of resources. You're gonna get pitch resources. I'm gonna send you some information about the group meetup. So before you leave tonight, you're gonna get everybody at your tables name either for Slack or for email, and then find a time to get together between now and the next session. My suggestion is 2 weeks out. A Google Hangout is fine, a Skype call is fine, it doesn't have to be in person. You can use Slack calling as well if you want to. Anybody not familiar with Slack at this point? Right. Anybody not? Don't raise your hand. It's okay too. Slack has a feature that allows you to. So Slack is like instant message for groups. So you can form a group for just the folks at your table. You can form a group for just the marketers in the room. You can form a group for just the technologists in the room. So the idea of Slack and the community on Slack is if you have a question as you're doing your deliverables, feel free to ask that question of me or anybody else in the group on the Slack channel. Your channel is specific for this group, is Seattle 2018. There's also Kitsap, there's also Tacoma, there's also the previous Seattle channel. So if you post something on general, it will go to all the channels. So please go in the introductions channel and introduce yourself, who you are, what your company is doing, and what your skill set is, or what help you need. Make an introduction to yourself. So what we're going to do is give you a chance to connect. Some of you are going to be like, yeah, that was really interesting. I'm not going to go do this. Totally cool. Glad you came. Thanks. Take a pizza home with you. So we're in startup land, even though it doesn't look like it, which means bus yourself, because your mom's not here. Take some pizza home with you, because it's awesome. Don't take the plates home with you. They need to stay here. You're also going to achieve your monthly deliverables. So for this month, the things you're going to do in the next 30 days is you're going to document what your venture score was. You're going to write up your why for yourself. You're going to list your problem and solutions, and you're going to rank them based on what you know today. They're going to fundamentally change over the next 6 months. Like you have a hypothesis of what they are now, but so this will be in your email inbox tomorrow. As long as you have a ticket, so we know how to track you. If you don't have a ticket, that's a problem. This comes out the day after with the slides from this session will be posted on the DK Barker blog. It's not public, it's only for the people who have the tickets. You're going to do your market research, and you're going to continue to work on your pitch. You're going to bring those deliverables to the session for next month. The first hour at your table will be mentors. So and again, for those of you who came in late, the mentors will be here for the first hour. Sometimes they stay, sometimes they don't. If they stay, I'd encourage you to buy them a beer and get to know them. But my commitment to them is, hey, come for an hour. You'll only have to talk to people who are prepared, right? So you don't have to listen to the same person over and over again. That's super important. So those are your deliverables for next month. The following month, we'll have a new set of deliverables. They kind of build on top of each other. So you're going to start doing research and customer development. But if you don't know what's happening in the competition in the market and you haven't done the research, that makes it a challenge. Okay? Questions about mechanics or deliverables or those sorts of things right now? Yeah?
In terms of the market research, do you advise using readily available or free resources, or would you suggest there's a time and a place that's appropriate for purchasing access?
So yeah, for some of you who don't know, there's research you can buy that's paid research that maybe could range from $500 to $5,000, and the answer is I would always do my own research first. And then if I felt like that was important research before I was doing a funding piece, I might buy it. But my experience has been, especially with the writers of that research, is if you write that person directly and say, hey, I'm doing a startup, and I'm doing some market research in this category, the big firms will typically say, cool, we'll give you a discount or give it to you for free. So, but the ask is not the obnoxious, I'm a founder, I deserve to get this for free ask. The ask is hey, I'm looking for this research, I'm trying to figure out what I can do. Obviously it's a startup, I haven't decided to do the company yet. I'm looking for how do I put the research together, are there other resources I should look at as well? And often you'll find that the people who write that research want to know if you have an up-and-coming product. So it's a happy quid pro quo for them of, hey, just tell me what deals you're seeing that are interesting in this space because I want to write about them. So I would go after it that way as well before I would, at this stage, spend any money on any research. Yeah?
A super tactical question,
Yeah.
so if this is the wrong form, let me know.
No worries.
But it might be useful for others. So all of my devices are provided by my big tech company?
Correct.
Okay to work on them, or do I need new devices?
I would work on your own. So the question is, all of my devices are provided by my big tech company. Should I use their devices to do your work? And my answer is no, you should not, depending on which big tech company it is. We are known for having overreaching non-competes. which means if I work on something during my own hours on my own equipment, it belongs to me. But if I work on something where I'm using your equipment, it belongs to them. So depending on which non-disclosure, non-compete, and non-solicitation you have, Amazon's worse on the scale, others are not as bad. It's one of the competitive advantages California has over us. So I would say, find a machine to do it on that's not on their equipment. So.